everyone, my name's Karma Hickman. I'm an associate solicitor in the immigration team at Bindmans, and this is the first of a two-part episode of Immigration Unpacked with my colleague Natalie Loader, who's a partner in our team. In this first episode, we'll be doing a kind of whistle-stop roundup of key immigration developments in 2025. A lot happened, so there's quite a lot to get through. And in the next episode, we'll be looking ahead to some of what we know is coming and some of what we think is coming in 2026. Thanks for joining me for this, Natalie.
It's my pleasure.
So we're going to start with the very beginning of 2025. We had eVisas. We had the abolition of the biometric residence permit on the 31st of December 2024. And then 2025 with eVisas. Kind of what was that about, Natalie? Or what going?
Well, what is an eVisa? So an eVisa is basically a visa that you show digitally. So previously we had biometrics residence permits, which was a little card. We stopped using those on the 31st of December 2024. So all of them expired on the 31st of December 2024, even if your leave was longer than that. And I think that caused a lot of confusion because so many people thought my BRP expires on the 31st of December 2024, therefore my visa ends that date. But actually, when you registered your eVisa, you do it online. It doesn't actually take that long to do. It should be relatively easy to set up. You do it on the gov.uk website. So you register your eVisa, you have to upload your passport details, and then basically your visa is linked to that passport. If your passport changes, you have to change it through the online system. Unfortunately, there's not an app for it, but it's all done on the gov.uk website.
Yeah, I mean, it's a massive change in kind of immigration world. Without going into loads of detail, I think it's safe to say we have seen lots of teething problems, but hopefully
as with any new technology, I think we're bound to see, that there are glitches and there are some people who just can't seem to, get their eVisa up and running, while other people, they can do it in a matter of minutes, and some people it might take a few days. So I would say if you haven't done it, definitely do it now, because the way that you demonstrate your immigration status, not just when you're traveling, but also when you were doing a right to work check or a right to rent check, or if the bank needs to do a check on you, or if the DVLA needs to do a check on you, that will all be done now through the digital system. So if you're unsure about how to do it, look at the gov.uk website or contact your solicitor.
Yes. We had another electronic development, which was at the start of April 2025. We had the launch of the electronic travel authorization. Now that had existed before for a small select group of nationalities, but then come April, they rolled it out across the board, including to EU nationals. I know I used to get a lot of inquiries, I'm EU. Basically, that's for anyone who doesn't need a visa but isn't a British national.
That's right. So if you're a nationality where you didn't need to have a visit visa to come to visit the UK, so the ETA, the electronic travel authorization, only applies to people who are coming to visit the UK. So if you have a residence permit here, if you have a visa to be in the UK, or if you have ILR, then you do not need to worry about an ETA. You do not need that to travel. What you need is to be able to show your eVisa digitally. If you are a national of a country that did not need a visa previously to come to the UK as a visitor, then prior to traveling, you need to make an application for an ETA. It's very much like the US ESTA system, and other countries have something quite similar. It's not a visa, it's just approval to travel, and you will still be or potentially you could still be questioned at the border when you arrive in the UK to ask why you come into the UK, and an assessment is made there.
Security check, more or less.
Yes.
And the questions about your reasons for travel, why you're coming in, that also happens on arrival in the UK.
That's right. So it's just giving the airline assurance that you are someone who is likely to be accepted into the UK upon arrival. So you have to apply for it. Again, it's done through the gov.uk website. It takes around 5 minutes to do, but it's not a lengthy application. And whilst I think what's the time frame for Karma? Is it 3 working days?
No, it's anything between a few minutes up to, it can take longer if they want to do. But I think a lot of it is quite automated.
I
and it
think
don't
most
have
people,
to do extra checks. Yeah, they're getting them.
that's right.
But
Most
I'm going to
people are
move
getting them in
on.
minutes, aren't they? Or
Yeah,
maybe
well,
within a
some
couple
people,
of
yeah,
hours.
literally.
Yeah.
That was at the start of April. That was the 2nd of April, I think.
Hmm.
And then big news in May, we had the Home
Oh,
Office's.
sorry, just sorry
Yes,
to interrupt you, Karma. Just to go back to the ETA. So there's this soft launch of it in April last year, and they were being a little bit flexible because people didn't know about it.
yeah,
But there's a strict enforcement from the 25th of February this year.
which
So
we'll talk about in
which
the
we'll
next
talk about
section.
later. Yeah.
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 Um, okay, yes, May, white paper. So restoring control over the immigration system.
Mm-hmm.
The government kind of laid out a general blueprint of where it sees its immigration policy going.
Mm-hmm.
So just, I think we'll be talking about some of the nitty gritty as we move through the year and next year. But I think some of the headline things are, they said they were going to increase the period of time taken to qualify for indefinite leave to 10 years. They said they were going to change, like big changes in family migration. In particular, they were talking about ending exceptionality, because lots of people who don't meet the requirements of the immigration rules are still able to come here or stay here because
Mm-hmm.
of particular circumstances of their case, such as a child or something like that. It's basically on a human rights basis, and the government said it wants to reduce that right down.
Yeah.
It,
So what they said was they want to sort of promote growth,
well,
have
that's
an
the other
immigration
side.
system which
Yeah,
promotes growth but is controlled and is managed, sort of
yes.
implying that we don't have a system that is controlled and managed now, which we do, but they want to control and manage it more.
Yeah, and the whole tone of the paper was very much all about economics, and well,
Yes.
we noticed that people who come for family settlement are on average only earning whatever
Hmm.
29,000, and we want to promote kind of more highly skilled people. So there was a very unpleasant, I suppose, tone to the whole thing.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
one of the big things in there, which came into force in July, was the increase in the skills threshold for skilled worker visas.
That's right.
So
That's right.
you has a bit
So
about that.
yeah, so what we saw, what we're seeing is sort of a return to sort of pre-Brexit requirements in terms of skill level. So before the UK left the EU, if you wanted to come to the UK on a work permit, which is called a skilled worker visa, it used to be called the Tier 2 General, it's now called the skilled worker visa. If you wanted to come, then you had to be doing a degree level job or higher, so a job that was degree level. So it was RQF level 6. Because Brexit meant we were going to have a very big skills drain
Yeah.
from EU nationals, they lowered the skill level to RQF level 3, which is a school
Okay.
leaver level
Cool
job.
leaver, yeah.
Yeah. Um, so we actually, because of Brexit, got a much more flexible system, and there were more roles which could be sponsored for work permits
Mm.
effectively. Now they've said, no, we don't want that anymore. We're going to go back to that higher levels. So now you have to be doing a degree level job, so
Yeah.
a graduate level job, so RQF level 6. And so the number of job types that can be sponsored for a work permit in the UK is now really, really vastly reduced. There
Yeah.
is something called the temporary shortage list,
Yeah.
where the Home Office or the government recognises that there are certain skills that we have a lack of in the UK, and we do need to look for talent from outside of the UK to perform those roles. So so the roles on the temporary shortage list are roles which are between school leaver level and graduate level, so RQF 3 to RQF 5. And the Migration Advisory Committee has said that it's justified to have these roles as sponsorable roles. And the Home Office has said, yes, it's fine for that, so long as there's a workforce strategy in place for that type of role. And employers are showing a commitment to trying to increase recruitment from the resident labour market. While it's great that we can still sponsor under these, temporary shortage list roles, there's a new requirement that if you are on a TSL temporary shortage list role, you cannot bring your dependents to the UK. So there's an impact on family members joining skilled workers in the
And
UK
I
who are on
think it's
temporary shortage list roles.
probably worth highlighting here briefly that these changes were only prospective in the sense that if you were already here on a lower skilled job, then that was okay. It was only people applying for a skilled worker visa for the first time from 22nd of July who were.
That's right.
And I think the other big change was or for some people, the end of the social care visa. So that's now gone completely, has it, Natalie?
Well, no, you can still be sponsored as a carer in the UK on a social care visa in the UK if you were before the 22nd of July already being sponsored in the UK,
Right, so, yes.
But you can't join that category freshly now from outside of the UK. So anyone in the UK already here is able to extend until 2028. So they're imagining a sort of phasing out of being able to sponsor people in these roles, but it's being kept under review because obviously carers are a very, very important sector of worker in the UK.
And then moving on from that, those were the 22nd of July changes, and they were big. We had basically been a really dark, gloomy, rubbish year for everything immigration related. The one bright point in all of this, I think, was possibly a change to the EU settlement scheme, which kind of more or less slipped under the radar, which was a change in how they calculated when people would qualify for settled status. So they had really strict limits before about you not having to exceed more than 6 months in any 12 months. But that horrible coincidence in terms of timing with Brexit and COVID, it just created a perfect storm. So many people were hit hard by going back home to spend time with family during COVID. Anyway, in July, the government just kind of held its hands up and said, look, we can't deal with this anymore. So we're going to change it completely. So as long as you were here, as long as you had pre-settled status before we left the EU at the end of December 2020, in order to qualify for settled status now, you only need to show that you've been in the UK for 30 of the last 60 months. So you could have had, 30 months at the beginning, 30 months at the end, 30 months in the middle, but it doesn't matter how long that absence was, as long as it didn't exceed 30 months overall.
That's right. And I think that they're being quite flexible about it, aren't they? And they're not requiring sort of lots and lots and lots of evidence around it.
Yeah. A very positive approach generally, I think, to EU nationals, which is great.
Which is great because it's a very large number of people, who are impacted by these EU rules.
Yeah. And then back to our general pattern of dark news,
doom and gloom.
This was a horrible one, really. In August, I think, end of August, they announced with only like days' notice that they were suspending all family reunion applications for refugees, meaning until that point, if you were a refugee and you could show that your family member had been part of your family before you left your country of origin, it was more, it wasn't automatic because nothing's ever automatic with the Home Office, but you didn't have lots of hoops to jump through to bring your family to the UK. And then almost from one day to the next, the government's like, we're suspending it, we're considering it, we're looking at what we're going to do. And then we didn't find out what they were going to do until November, when we had this horrible paper, Restoring Order and Control, like this horrible militaristic sounding document. We're back. We had a momentary break in the recording because Natalie's laptop completely crashed. But here we are.
It was too depressed, Karma, by what we were talking about.
Get me out. We were talking about the suspension in the family reunion provisions, and what I was about to follow up with and say was in November we had the government's full paper. Well, it's stated intentions of how it's going to handle asylum, the asylum policy world going forward. We had this horrible title, Restoring Order and Control, the idea that everything's completely wild and the government hasn't got grips on it. And it outlined a few key points. We don't have all of the detail yet, but we have some idea of where the government wants to take it, and some of it will be consulted on, some of it won't. So first of all, the government said it was going to split asylum into kind of two main areas. One is the core protection route, and the other is this new concept, protection, work and study route. So I think the government's hoping that once people have been recognised as refugees, it wants to switch them over into some kind of refugee-related work and study route, which, Natalie, I don't know what you think, but in my experience, most refugees would love to be working and studying. Like,
Yes.
they don't want to sit around doing nothing. So that's the first big thing. The second thing is they're reducing the duration of refugee status from 5 years down to 2.5 years. And at the point at which people renew their refugee status, they'll need to show that there's an ongoing need of protection. They're extending the duration of time people have to live here in order to qualify for indefinite leave settlement. And that will go up from the current 5 years up to, shockingly, 20 years. But again, there may be wiggle room for people on the work and study route. Horribly, I'm afraid they have said they're going to stick with the idea that there's no automatic family reunion. And as far as we can work out, refugees who want to bring their family members to the UK will be treated on a par with British citizens or people have indefinite leave, which is all well and good, except it requires you to show certain levels of income, which obviously lots of refugees when they first arrive just can't do. So it means splitting families for, potentially months, years, and reducing access to benefits. So that's being introduced, some of it, maybe all of it in 2026. And then another kind of heavy going piece of news was part suitability, Natalie. Can you tell me a bit about that?
So part suitability, so it replaces part of the immigration rules that we have already, and it touches on all visa application types, except I think part suitability doesn't apply to EU nationals and their family members and protection claimants under Part 11 of the immigration rules. I suppose it sets out who's eligible to apply for a visa and who's not eligible to apply for a visa. So who's suitable for it. So it's the clue is in the name, part suitability. The biggest change, I suppose, that's going to impact a lot of our clients is the change for Appendix FM applications. That's people who are family members of British nationals or people settled in the UK. And whereas previously, if you had a spouse who's a British citizen or settled in the UK, then if you had a period of overstay in the UK, it would be disregarded because it's considered that your ability to have a family life in the UK with your UK partner it overrides, any period of overstay you may have had. Now it's going to be a mandatory refusal for anyone who's had a period of overstay if they're applying from outside of the UK. Other changes would be that you could have your visa cancelled if you're convicted in the UK or abroad. You're given a prison sentence of 12 months or more. So they're quite sort of drastic changes,
They are. And again, they seem to have largely slipped under the radar. I don't really hear many people talking about them, but they're massive, like they're huge changes for people who are who have partners in the UK. And I think one thing, Roberta and I did a whole episode talking about this, but the one additional worry is it is a mandatory, which means they have to refuse, like you said, if someone has a conviction where they've been given 12 months or more in prison. But what does that mean for people who are already here? Like,
yes.
I mean, there's no wriggle room. It's not you should think about refusing someone who's had a 12-month prison sentence. And also there's no time that's elapsed. So if you're 50 and you had a 12-month sentence when you're 20, but you've been living in the UK for 4 years with your partner legally, you're working, everything's fine.
Yep.
As it stands on the face of it, that your application would be refused. And how that's going to play out going forward.
Exactly. I think we'll probably just need a bit more time. There'll definitely be litigation on it, and I suppose we'll get a bit more clarity as time goes on. But the change is potentially quite massive and could impact a very large group of people. Yeah.
And then I think possibly I don't know if it's the biggest news of the year. For me, it felt like the biggest news of the year, but I guess it depends on what areas you work in, was the earned settlement consultation announcement. I think there's so much to get through. Basically, I'm just going to sum it up in a sentence. And I think we'll maybe talk a little bit about it more in the next episode, because Tanya and I did spend a lot of time looking at it a few weeks ago. But this was the announcement that the government plans to extend the period of time people need in order to qualify for indefinite leave. And it's massive. I mean, it's literally the biggest change that I've
Exactly. And
seen since 2012.
it's especially as we don't know if there'll be a transitional arrangement. So
Yeah,
it could impact people already in the UK, already planning to submit settlement
yeah.
applications this year because they're reaching 5 years or whatever their current qualifying period is. And they may find that come April this year, they no longer qualify then, and everything they've been working towards is going to change. Yeah.
So just to be clear, at the moment, the government is consulting on this up until the 12th of February. It's consulting on some elements, but not on other elements. We don't know exactly. We've been told April for some things, but we don't have exact dates. But anyway, the key takeaway here is reply to the consultation. And that's
Yes.
the earned settlement consultation. And
Yes.
then, Natalie, moving towards the end of the year, we had
Mhm.
an increase in the immigration skills charge. Can you
Yep,
tell me
that's right.
that?
So the immigration skills charge is something that employers who want to sponsor workers in the UK need to pay. So they pay it for skilled workers, and how much you pay depends on how long you want that worker in the UK. So if you are wanting to employ someone in the UK, the employer has to assign something called a certificate of sponsorship to that worker. On the certificate of sponsorship, they will say that they will be working with us from this date until this date. So basically, they set the duration of the visa. When they set that duration, then they pay a charge per year. So if you apply for if you are a small or charitable organisation, then the amount you paid per year was £364 per year. That on the 16th of December was increased to £480 per year. So there was an increase, which, although it may not sound like that much, but for small organizations, actually, it does represent quite a large increase in how much they have to pay out initially to be able to sponsor someone for work in the UK. If you're a large organization, a medium or a large organization, then you are looking at previously £1,000 per year that the visa was for which the visa was valid. From the 16th of December, that was raised to £1,320 per year. So now, if you're a large organisation and you want to sponsor someone on a 5-year visa to come and work in the UK, previously for the immigration skills charge, you would have paid £5,000. Now you'll be paying £6,600 for a 5-year visa.
And
So
that's
it
a
is a
big step up.
it is a big increase. And the reason why the Home Office have increased the fee is because they, I think, really want to encourage businesses to not rely on skilled workers. They've realised that financial burdens are a way of preventing people from trying to recruit from outside of the UK because it's just so costly. So it's to encourage businesses to train UK workers and reduce reliance on overseas talent.
And then just like literally, if you could, in maybe 1 minute or 2 minutes
Mhm,
tops, because we've been chatting for a while now, that increase in the immigration skills charge is kind of part of a whole package of
mhm.
changes that the government's introduced
Yeah.
into how it treats sponsors over the course of
Mhm.
2025. Could you kind of nutshell put that in a
Sure. So
for us?
what we're seeing generally is that the Home Office are tightening up the rules around sponsorship. So when you want to sponsor a worker in the UK, if you're a company, then you have to get something called a sponsor license. When you get that sponsor license, you're basically saying to the Home Office, "Hey, we want to join your club, and we're going to abide by all of your rules." So you enter into a regulatory environment with the Home Office, and within that, there are reporting obligations. You have to let the Home Office know what's going on in the company, if there are changes to the company, what's going on with each sponsored worker, if there's any changes to their roles. And if you don't make those reports in a timely way, or if you don't make them at all, then you can lose your license. Additionally, you've got lots of record keeping requirements because you have to be able to show what you're doing and why you're doing. It's
Yeah.
not just good enough to say to the Home Office, "Oh, this was our intention." You need the paperwork to back it up. So there's record keeping duties as part of being a sponsor. And what we're seeing is that the Home Office are now doing more checks on employers. So pre-COVID, the way the Home Office did checks on sponsors would be they would send a compliance officer to your offices, they would do an audit, they would write up a report, and then that gets sent back to the licensing team in Sheffield. They review it, and then they decide whether or not you're meeting your sponsor duties or not meeting your sponsor duties. COVID kind of changed everything because everything went digital. And so now the Home Office have much more capacity to look at individual sponsors because they can do it remotely. So they will just and also as part of this, there's more data sharing with other government organisations. So what we see is that, for instance, the Home Office, UK Borders, UK VI. I was about to use a really old name.
That's one from the past.
UK, yeah, exactly.
That's
Let's say UKVA, showing my age. The UKVI. So they will share information with HMRC. So they can look at our minimum salary requirements being met based on how much salary or how much PAYE is being reported through HMRC. And where they see there might be dips and people aren't being paid the correct amount, they're writing out to sponsors saying, please give us pay slips, please give us evidence of all of your workers, which is actually a lot of work for sponsors to deal with because they don't say we found one person, please provide evidence for that person. They say we want it for everybody. So it then can become this huge job. So they just have more. They're just able to sort of cover more ground by doing things remotely and by having this data sharing agreement with other government organisations. So we are seeing the Home Office write out to more sponsors, asking for information, and then on the basis of what they receive, they're either having their licenses suspended or having them revoked. And
it's being affected. It's just part of this whole attitude.
Yes.
Or policy, of making a more hostile environment.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose it
work with them or live with them.
Yeah. And it sort of goes along with, the government want to reduce both legal and illegal migration. So, one way of reducing legal migration is if you have less sponsors, there's less people who can be sponsored. But obviously, if you are a sponsor, you do need to be taking your sponsor duties very, very seriously. If the Home Office do ask you for information, even if you haven't done anything wrong, you must respond to it and take it seriously. So I would say to any sponsor, if they are being contacted by the Home Office, don't see it as something innocuous, take it very, very seriously. Do get your lawyer involved as well, just to make sure that the response going back to them is as robust as possible. Because if you send information through and then they say, actually, we're going to revoke your license because we're not satisfied about something, then you're in a much bigger pickle than if, you would have sort of taken the time to make a proper response to the Home Office and really made sure that what you were sending them was very robust and there wasn't any, gaps left that were unexplained.
Okay, thank you, Natalie. I think that's it for now. That's been quite a dreary roundup of 2025. We will be back shortly discussing 2026, and I can't
promise it will be any better.
Brighter news, no. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.